everybody. Thank you for joining us. The rest of this will be Mike, but just wanted to welcome everyone to the space and to this candidate forum. My name is Dan Fingus. I work with the Vermont Conservation Voters, and we're so happy to have you here. First, want to obviously thank our candidates for being here: Tim Corcoran, Asher Edelson, Will Greer, and Leon Johnson. Let's give them a round of applause to start. This forum is a coalition of groups that came together to get more information about these candidates out to the public. So being represented here along with the Vermont Conservation Voters is the ACLU of Vermont, VPIRG, Rights and Democracy, and as you'll see from our MC for the evening, Planned Parenthood Vermont Action Fund. I'm sure that since you are all here and interested, you know that the primary election is in exactly 2 weeks on August 13th. Make sure you vote. Tell all your friends and family to vote. We have Cat TV generously recording this event. Yeah, I'm sitting right there. Wow. Yeah, I'm timing. You guys can sit right there. Cat TV is generously recording this event. It will be available online shortly after today, so you can share with friends and family who might have missed today. With that, I want to introduce Logan Snow, Communications Specialist for Planned Parenthood Vermont Action Fund, our MC.
Everybody, can y'all hear me okay? Yes. Okay, wonderful. So thank you, Dan, for that lovely introduction. I am not going to waste any time. I'm just going to jump right into it. So my name is Logan. I use she, they pronouns, and I am the communications specialist for Planned Parenthood Vermont Action Fund. And I'm born and raised in Bennington, so I am so excited to be here and facilitating this tonight. So thank you for having us, and thanks for showing up. This is so special. All right, so right off the bat, just level setting. The format is going to be that candidates will be given the opportunity for opening and closing statements, and they will be given 2 minutes for answering questions. We're going to be rotating the answer order of the questions, so that means each candidate will have an opportunity to answer first. Each organization has submitted 1 question. There are 2 questions at the end that our coalition came together to ask, and Dan is our timekeeper. So candidates, keep an eye on Dan. He's going to give you 30-second and 10-second cue cards for the candidates. All right, so introductions. If y'all are comfortable sharing your pronouns as well, please do. So Tim, we're going to get started with you. Take us away.
Thank you, Logan, and thank you for everybody coming out. It's a great turnout for a primary in August. So thanks everybody. Thanks for the sponsors. I look forward to tonight's questions. For those who don't know me, my name is Tim Corcoran, and I'm the current state rep here in Bennington 2, no longer District 1, just District 2. And my previous 11 terms, I've had the pleasure of serving on the House Transportation Committee, where I, always advocated for local funding, whether it be town highway aid, increased funding for Class 2 programs, our town highway aid, bridge program, but most importantly, and I think Asher will agree with me, is Amtrak service. That's one thing that I've fought year and year after to get, and while we've made progress on that, we still got a little ways to go. There's some grants that the federal government is applying for. Hopefully those will come to fruition in the coming years, but I definitely have my eye on the ball for that. To hopefully, like I said, we'll see that in North Bennington someday soon. Outside the legislature, I am in the real estate agent, so I sell houses. Currently married, and we have a 11-year-old daughter. So thank you, and I look forward to tonight's questions.
Thank you. Asher.
Hello, my fellow Bennington folks. My name's Asher Edelson. I use he, him pronouns. I would like to thank the Old First Church Barn for hosting us tonight, as well as Planned Parenthood and the other organizations that have put this wonderful event together, as well as all of you for taking the time out of your Tuesday evening to join us here. I'm sure it was no schlep whatsoever. That being said, I do have Tourette's, I will warn you. In 2022, I was one of the 3 inaugural recipients of the Vermont Democratic Party Leahy Award for Young Democrats Leading the Way Forward. During my acceptance speech, I told folks in that audience that I would seek a legislative seat in the year 2024. Considering how I got a thumbs up from Patrick Leahy, while I said that, I'd say I'm well within my right to seek this office, although that's far from the only reason I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I love Bennington. Bennington is my home. If only I could have been born here, I would have. Alas, I did not have that choice. I chose to make Bennington my home. I chose to make Vermont my home. This is a place that I love. This is a place that not only have I become a homeowner, become a teacher, I have met a wonderful partner with whom we are expecting a child, our very first child in December. I'm running on behalf of many different issues. One of them being transit, as Tim mentioned, and I agree with him on a lot of that stuff. That being said, I am running in large part because I want Vermont to be prepared to be the best it can be for folks, including my unborn son. Thank you.
Thank you, Asher. Will.
So good evening and thank you all for coming. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Will Greer. I'm a resident of North Bennington, next door neighbors with Leon. I got my bachelor's of arts from Bennington College. In public administration was my concentration, and I really studied rural politics in Vermont. A little bit about my background. If you can't hear it in my voice, you'll probably hear it at some point in this debate or forum. But I'm from Texas, and I grew up on a cattle ranch. So living along our U.S.-Mexico border really gave me a viewpoint that many people don't have, and I really cherish that, and it's impacted my life in so many ways. When I moved to Vermont, I didn't know what kind of community I would find. I didn't know if I'd find church, neighbors, friends, people that I'd want to spend the rest of my life with, but I did, and everyone has embraced me so far. I'm currently a justice of the peace in the town. I'm also a former member of the Community Policing Advisory Review Board, which I was so grateful to serve on the past 2 years. In terms of what I do for work, I was a data analyst in the land title insurance industry, so I have a lot of experience in that. But I've also spent a lot of time in Montpelier, both advocating for criminal justice issues and also drug prevention. My former independent contract was with Flavors for Kids Vermont, which worked to end the sale of flavored tobacco products, just like our neighbors down in Massachusetts. And then I also serve in the Vermont Democratic Party's state leadership, and that has taught me a lot behind the scenes as well about how things work in Montpelier. So I look forward to jumping into the issues and talking more about it.
Thank you, Will. Leon.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to introduce yourself to me. My name is Leon Johnson, and I'm currently a resident of North Bennington, formerly Bennington, and living right next to Will. I moved here from Birmingham, Alabama in 1977, and attended college in Tennessee, Morristown College and Tennessee Technological University, which recommended that I come to Vermont to work for Union Carbide, formerly a company now Energizer, before it closed up. So I worked at Energizer Battery Company for 36 years as a quality control engineer and retired in 2013. Shortly after I arrived here, I played sports in the men's program, softball, flag football with the old racetrack, and all those particular places were all involved with that. Then I became certified, and it's a different, I was certified in all the sports that I participated in high school, softball, football, basketball, field hockey, and then I'm currently now also a certified college softball official for the NCAA. So I work Division I, Division II gangs. 30 seconds, so I gotta move on here. I used my, as things were going on, my kids grew up and they attended Sacred Heart School. How I got into that, when they got ready to attend education, high school, they asked that I run for public office to represent the interests of the private school students in the public school. So that's how I got there. And time's up.
Thank you, Leon. 2 minutes goes by real fast. All right, so thank you all for your statements. We are going to head right into the questions. So they're going to be asked in a rotational manner, and every candidate is going to get an opportunity to answer first, second, third, and fourth, and candidates are going to get 2 minutes each for answers. So the first question, Will, you are going to answer first. I know, I'm going to go off of my notes. Okay. If I deviate from the notes, train will go off the tracks. So this past year, the legislature passed major environmental legislation, including modernizing the renewable energy standard, creating a first-in-the-nation climate superfund, responding to the devastating floods of 2023 with the Flood Safety Act, modernizing Act 250 to prioritize both conservation and making it easier to build housing in population centers and downtowns. Please reflect on those bills and tell us what your climate priorities are moving forward.
Well, that is a lot of bills, and I've tried to keep up with as many of them as I could, but I really want to focus on the Act 251. But I think it's just so timely when we talk about flooding and the climate crisis here in Vermont, because the Northeast Kingdom just flooded today, earlier this morning, and that was heartbreaking to hear the stories from up there. But I think we'll get back on our feet like we have. But I think what I want to talk about with Act 250 in particular is definitely prioritizing building away from the floodplains and the flood zones that we currently have been developing in. I know that's contentious because a lot of our historic development has been built on these floodplains and these flood zones. But also you have infill development, and that was the part about Act 250, modernizing it to keep it up with filling in our downtown centers and really making sure our economic hubs are growing and having encouraging and nurturing that growth. But I want to also just talk about, because when we see all the flooding happening elsewhere in the state, I just think about how lucky we've been so far to not suffer in the same way that we've been seeing in these other communities. But we can't just ride on luck forever. We have to make sure that we're developing and being resilient. And so that's how I view it. But environmental issues aren't my particular forte, but I definitely look forward to diving into those bills if given the opportunity.
Thank you, Will. Leon.
Okay. Will we be able to use some of our time to come back later on if we don't use it all? Okay. Under climate change, one of the biggest things is to anticipate and understand and prepare for the hazards associated with climate change. They're here, and we need to recognize that. Vermont recognized the challenges in climate change and the quality of life on this planet that we live in. And so Vermont, I think, is pretty proactive in regard to the effects of the climate changes and has taken various types of steps in studying what the climate look like and what the changes are and how to mitigate the problems along that line. And those things are happening in the state. So examples of dealing with quality of the air, clean water, heating, electricity, recycling, and management. Those are things that Vermont is now doing well to be able to offset some of the things that are happening in climate change.
Thank you, Leon.
Well, now if I got some more time.
Yeah, of course.
I left off at the part that when I got elected for school board, I was elected to Mount Anthony Union High School and the Career Development Center were together. And eventually I worked to help separate those. I was then also appointed for the SVSU school board. And so for more than 30 years, I've been on those boards. So I want to thank the voters for electing me for 3 consecutive 10-year sessions on the school board. In the capacity as being a school board, and I got 30 more seconds and I'll have to come back again later on, I use my skills as a quality control engineer to help solve some of the problems associated with the things in the school system and deliver quality education and service for the community. I'll stop there and reserve the others for later. 10 seconds. I'm going to save 10 seconds.
We'll get through that. All right, Tim.
I think I remember the question. Climate priorities, some of the things that, I was proud to support this last legislative session was, Act 250. That was a huge bill. There was some, with any big bill like that, there's going to be some good things and there's going to be some bad things. And at the end of the day, I think we got it right. One of the things that I like about that is it's going to allow certain towns such as Bennington to be classified as Tier 1A, which will bypass, the Act 250. So it's going to hopefully expedite a lot of housing projects locally. So, that's a good thing. So I definitely appreciate that passing. S213, the Flood Safety Act, protecting our river corridors, building smarter, managing our wetlands, good thing. And as far as transportation, obviously transportation plays a key role in, in our environment. As a committee, we've been funding grants for EV bikes, EV cars, charging stations. We put in roughly $21 million over the last couple of years. So we've pumped a lot of money in these programs to incentivize people to go out and buy EVs, and which they have done. But the unfortunate part is those funds have dwindled because those were all federal monies that we were able to secure. AOT is going to be applying for another $100 million, and we should know whether or not we're going to get that funding. And if we don't get it come November, these funds will run dry. So we're going to need to find a dedicated source to keep that program going. And I'll also add the bottle bill. Didn't make the finish line. We need to come back and get that passed. I think that has a huge benefit on the climate. Buying more e-bikes, investing in public transit. I would just add the public transit, their deficit is like $3 to $5 million a year. We need to find a dedicated revenue source to fully fund them because that plays a key part.
Thank you. Asher.
This is an important issue. Not only does it affect our lives now, it's going to affect my son's life even more. And the future of our children depends on how we interact with and deal with the climate crisis. As your state representative, I will do everything in my power to support, work with, and embolden conservation districts. Many of you may be familiar with our own conservation district, which is the Bennington Conservation District. These conservation districts are the boots on the ground that are out there planting native trees, healing waterfronts, and doing things that actually are going to help restore our ecosystems and mitigate the damage of climate catastrophe. These awful floods that are going on in Barrie and the Northeast Kingdom and other parts of the state, they break my heart because A, it's going to harm human life, and B, it's going to harm our own state's wonderful scenery, something that we have to protect. We have to protect our lives, we have to protect our state. I want to support not only bills going through the legislature that have gone through the legislature that promote environmental stewardship. I truly believe that our conservation districts, being that they're the boots on the ground, ought to have our respect, our thanks, and our support. Furthermore, I'm going to piggyback off of Tim. We do need to support public transit 100%. Things like accessible trails will be on the forefront of my mind, not only as a transit issue, as an issue relevant to people with disabilities. Not one state in our country has a bill that states all trails need to be accessible. Vermont should be the first, and that will not only help bolster support for our local environments, it will ensure that people with disabilities can use trails, older folks can use trails without any issue. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Usher. All right, question 2. Vermont's prison system has some of the worst racial disparities in the country, incarcerating Black people at more than 7 times the rate of white people. What policies would you propose to address the systemic racism and eliminate the racial disparities that exist in our criminal legal system? Leon, you're first this time.
Okay, thank you, Logan. Racial disparity in this country is a problem. We need to make sure we understand what has happened in America. Nationally, more than 2/3 of the populations of people serving sentences are people of color. 55% of them are African Americans. And 1/3 of the people that were executed in this country between 1976 and 22 were African Americans. Anytime there is a group, when we're a diverse country and one group is subjected to more of the what's considered unfair treatment, or something is wrong, and that we need to address those issues. A person of race and ethnicity in this country should not be made to receive more harshly penalties under the criminal justice system. Every individual is entitled to equal rights under the law. And when you do that, you'll see that proportionally, and we apply the training and the needs for the individuals, because we are a diverse country, the numbers will drop. Thank you. 30 seconds, I'm adding them up. That's my So here's the 10 seconds plus the last 30 seconds in my opening statement. In May of this year, 2024, I was asked by Brian Champion to consider running for the House of Representatives. He thought that my record as an ethical leader, honest service, and hard work, that approach that I use to solve problems in the community and the school system to help make a difference. And that's why I'm out here, is to take my skills to do that. Thank you. I've used all my time now. Every minute.
Thank you, Leon. Tim, you're up next.
Wholeheartedly agree with what Leon said. I'll just add some of the things that we've done in Montpelier to try to, stem this situation. This year we passed 780 that added the executive director of racial equity to the judicial nominating board. We need to get people that are in the minority at the table to make decisions. So everybody's on the same page. We can see it through their lens, and they can see how we're seeing it through our lens, and kind of come to an agreement. So I think that was a great bill that probably didn't get too much publicity, but I was proud to support that. And actually, back in 2018, we created the racial equity position back in 2018, and since then we added a couple more staff people. What else can we do? I mean, I've been somewhat skeptical, but I'm becoming more and more open open to secondary enforcements. What should the police be allowed to pull you over for? Currently, we have seatbelts. That's a secondary offense. Should other things be secondary? License plate, tinted windows, so we can have that discussion of who's getting pulled over and why, and is there a pattern, and making sure we're getting the data that we're supposed to be getting from the law enforcement. Are they, giving that to us so we can analyze it and, try to, figure out if we need to make any new laws around that. But I think those were my notes on that. But again, I agree with what we said.
Thank you. Asher.
This is such a deplorable issue. We have such a white state, and yet so many people of color end up going through the system. I would support not any bill. I would support a bill that would institute more community policing in our communities, from Bennington to the Northeast Kingdom to Burlington. That is one crucial step that I see ending this horrible disparity. Furthermore, I would love to work as much as possible with the Reconciliation Council. I believe in being a proactive listener and listening to folks who have endured hardship, to folks who have endured prejudice and discrimination. That will certainly guide a lot of my policy making and legislation regarding anything having to do with the horrible issue of racism. I definitely agree with Leon and Tim. We have a lot of work to do. And while it would be naive to say we can legislate the problem away, we can do things to mitigate it. Community policing and certainly looking at anything that the Reconciliation Council advises will be on the top of my priority list when it comes to this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Asher. Will.
I think when we look at the justice system, and we're particularly looking at the prison system, there are racial disparities, no doubt. The two things that I really think that we should definitely explore, and it's what the ACLU recommends as well as other organizations across our state, is re-examining the classification of certain drug offenses. I think that's most likely a primary reason that we're seeing such disparities in it, and also having more options for nonviolent offenses to begin with. And it comes down to numbers as well. I mean, we talk about the morality of it and the humanity. That's one thing. But when we look at how much it costs to actually put someone in prison, it's $31,000 in Vermont. In other states, it's much higher. But when you look at it on an economic scale, that's money that we're putting towards something that's not giving any benefit to society. So if we can make sure that we are keeping diversion programs going, expanding on those, and preventing a population of youth in particular from going into the system to begin with, I think that's really what we have to explore. And I think a lot about my father, because he owned a business for 31 years with the railroad industry, and he contracted, and it was hard labor. It was very hard. And almost every guy that worked for him had a criminal record, and these were people that weren't going to be employed anywhere else, so that limited their career prospects. But so many of them took that second chance on life once they got out of the system to make a better life for themselves, for their families, and now they're working towards helping their community. They're putting money back into the economy, and in that sense, it's just smart to make sure that we can look at these programs and see how we can reduce our prison population.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our next question, and I'm getting out of order. Apologies, candidates. We said it was going to be one way. I'm sticking to my notes. So, Asher, you're going to be up first for this one. Okay, so question 3. Abortion and reproductive liberty are constitutionally protected rights for Vermonters. However, there are ongoing attacks at the federal level, including attacks on access to contraception, medication abortion, gender-affirming care, IVF, and even emergency emergency services. If we were to see a federal abortion ban, Vermont would see that right taken away. Given that, and the ongoing financial hardships following COVID and stagnant Medicaid reimbursements in our state, how will you advocate for increased investment and protections in sexual and reproductive health care, including abortion? What else do you think is needed to strengthen and maintain abortion rights in our state?
Thank you so much for that question, Logan. I want to start by saying that I have always been and will always will be pro-choice. That has been one of my core values since I was a boy. I wholeheartedly supported the amendment to enshrine reproductive rights for all persons in our Constitution here in Vermont. I was proud to do so, as I'm sure was Logan and many, and pretty much all of us, I would imagine. It's not going to be enough, though, because we have a scary election coming up in 2024. And I know many of us are deeply, gravely concerned about what's going to happen. Even if the Democratic Party holds on to the White House, we have our reproductive rights here in Vermont. That is not the case throughout the country. So what I would propose as your state representative would be to join with other state representatives, other colleagues, in proposing a constitutional convention so that Vermont can join and lead the way with other states to ensure that not only does Roe v. Wade eventually become a codified law, that it becomes a constitutional amendment, which it should be right now. So elect me to be your state representative. I will do everything in my power to see that a constitutional amendment is in play, rather than, just protecting rights here, which I will certainly do every step of the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Asher. Bill?
Well, reproductive rights mean so much to me. I have two little sisters. They're 10 and 8, and they're getting up on their years where there's about to be conversations about this. And, I was a big supporter unequivocally of Prop 5 and enshrining the right to abortion, but also reproductive liberty in our state's constitution. I had a great time organizing with that and being part of that. And what we see happening around the nation right now with the discussion around IVF in particular, very concerning. That's how many families, particularly LGBTQ families, have access to that, people who have infertility issues. So I think that definitely protecting fertility is something that we have to focus on, because whether we like it or not, it's going to be a states' rights issue again. Just like abortion, after 50 years, it returned back to the states, and Vermont's led on that. But we also have to make sure that we're specifically going after IVF treatments and making sure that we are protecting that. One thing just to note, that I was endorsed by the Victory Fund, which one of their prerequisites is being pro-choice, being for reproductive health care, and I definitely was very supportive of that when I was speaking with that. And I understand also the diversity on this topic, because we all have different relationships in our lives that make reproductive health care a scary topic to bring up. I grew up in a very conservative church, and it wasn't talked about, but my personal relationship with God, it dictates it to some degree, but it really, there's so much more to the bigger picture, and it's about our community and the people around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Leon?
Okay, thank you. Reproduction rights were in place for more than 50 years, giving women the rights to decisions if they wanted to, when to have a child or not to have one, was being taken away all across the country now. In addition, decisions around birth control and having access to medical safety methods should be the decision of the female that's going to be the person that's bearing the child. That is what is being challenged. I think I heard somewhere that I don't know of any law that says a male can't do something. and it's not part of our species in which maintain our total existence on this earth is through the females. And who better knows what's right for them in order to sustain their life as opposed to terminating a pregnancy if it's not right for them, and being forced to carry that on or being forced to follow another pattern. I think it should be left to the female society to decide what it is that they want to do in terms of contraceptives and carrying a birth. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. Tim?
Yeah, I mean, my first year I was elected, I think 2003. You know, ever since then, there's always been amendments supporting pro-choice, and I've been there along every step of the way supporting that. So I've been a strong supporter of pro-choice. You know, it's, you know, I supported Prop 5. You know, Vermont is obviously way out in the front. It's more of, you know, us keeping an eye on what the Supreme Court is going to do, you know, and trying to circumvent some of those rulings, because it's sort of a wild and wacky Wild West, I would say, with the Supreme Court, and we don't know what they're going to be coming up with as far as new laws. But, you know, basically staying vigilant on that. But the key things that we can do is the medical care providers. In the state of Vermont, we are so far lacking providers that we need to do more to recruit providers, getting them here, pay them adequately, and then the medical reimbursement rate, Medicaid. Terrible. We need to bump up those rates to make those, you know, favorable for providers and doctors to come here to provide the services if they are asked to do so. So, you know, those are the two things that, you know, that we could do in the state of Vermont to work on, and, you know, just keeping an eye on what the feds are doing, because Vermont is the leader in pro-choice, and, you know, the record has shown that I support it along the way.
Thank you. All right, next question. Vermont has the lowest electricity rates and bills in New England because we have been prioritizing renewables and energy efficiency for 25 years. It's a huge success story. The legislature is now working to do the same efficiency and renewable work in the heating sector, but the fossil fuel industry, led by the ultra-conservative Koch network of organizations, are attacking them for it. The fossil fuel industry wants to keep things the way they are, no matter how much it costs Vermonters or damages the environment. What do you say to opponents of climate action in the face of evidence that moving away from fossil fuels is good for Vermont's economy and environment? And will you vote to reauthorize the Affordable Heat Act? Will, you're up first.
So, well, with the Affordable Heat Act, I think that it is a strong economic policy, even more than it is an environmental policy. We see how volatile oil prices are around the world, especially with what's happening in conflicts in the Middle East and elsewhere in the world. And that's a separate issue of energy independence. If we really want this to be a smooth transition, making sure that we are producing these resources in our country at least, and working with people where there are stable governments, that would help with the volatility of these prices. But when it comes to the Affordable Heat Act, I mean, it is just a study. So we definitely want to see what the recommendations are from the Public Utilities Commission. Seeing what they come up with, I think will be helpful on guiding whether or not we'll take up all those recommendations or some of them. Most of them, from what I understand, that they're considering, I would be generally supportive of, but I want to see that fully out in the open. And I know that, you know, there's a lot of talk about the credits and what would be part of the Affordable Heat Act. I don't think that it's doing the mark for low and moderate income Vermonters. I believe it says a third or 32% of the credits must go to low and moderate income Vermonters. I don't think that's enough in order to make it truly just and lower the cost for your average working family, because credits and write-offs, however we want to do it, it's not going to cover all of this, because we're looking at projections where it could be in the billions, but also the savings could be in the billions. So we have to leverage, we have to figure out how to balance it appropriately, that long term it does save the environment, and it also saves us money and makes us more secure, but also in the short term we're not gouging our pockets out over it. But that's how I view the Affordable Heat Act.
Thank you.
The Affordable Heat Act. This is one of the things that Vermont is doing and was doing, and the governor vetoed it, and the House and the Senate overrode it. The basics of this bill is, and it's needed because what you're looking for is those individuals that are below the poverty line that just can't afford to keep up with our rationale of supporting a climate and clean energy systems out here. If Vermont is going to do that, you're going to have something in place to make sure you bring everybody along that can afford it. And this is one of those acts that are going to provide additional benefits for those that are below the line that can't afford to pay for the heat themselves, while we continue to work on climate change and its effect on us in the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim.
Affordable Heat Act, yeah, standard. This was, I supported this back in 2023, but I had major trepidations about this piece of legislation, and we're starting to, pieces of this legislation are starting to trickle out. And the first piece of this plan to get implemented is going to cost us $17.3 billion. I don't know about you and me, but that's an awful lot of money. And when you're talking about what that's going to cost fuel dealers who aren't in a position to offset those tax credits because they just purely sell fuel and they don't sell heat pumps or anything else, you could potentially be adding on $2 to $3 to your fuel bill. If we did a survey, if we had our hands up in here, I think it would probably be mixed. Some people would be fine with it. People would be like, no way. People want fixed income. So, it's just starting to come out. I do have my reservations on it, but there are some major, question marks with that. Piece of legislation that, we're going to get the information in January and we're going to take a look at it and, see it, how it looks. And, the other one was the res bill, I think 289 or 689. Unfortunately, I couldn't support that. All previous renewable energy pieces of legislation I supported hands down. But again, this had a price tag of upwards of $1 billion. They cut it down to, 300 to 400, 500. So you can call it 500 million. So you have $500 million for your electric bill that might go up, and then 17 million for your fuel. I just don't think the appetite is there for Vermonters to do that. So I'm not saying that I'm opposed to these, but I want to see what the full picture is before everybody's saying I'm supporting it one way or the other. To be determined.
Thank you. Asher.
Cost effectiveness comes to mind here. I don't remember the exact number of dollars I paid as a homeowner for oil to keep my home last year, although it was a lot. Hopefully it'll be less this year, but who knows what it'll be the year after and the year after that. Vermont already sources a lot of its energy from alternative energy sources, and I would like to see more of that, more wind energy, more solar, more hydropower. Sorts of energy that are renewable. The types of energy that are renewable are going to be, as far as I can tell, less prone to intense fluctuation than oil. And in terms of what I feel is best for the pocketbooks of working class and middle class Vermonters, I see the Affordable Heat Act as a way forward. I will do everything in my power in Montpelier to support working families with regard to, among other things, the Affordable Heat Act, and in securing more alternative energy sources, more wind power. That way we can rely more on alternative energy. That way perhaps it will mitigate costs further. I'm all about mitigating costs. If there's not a cure, I at least want to mitigate. And the Affordable Heat Act seems like it's a good step in the right direction for allowing Vermonters choice to move toward a non-fossil fuel method of heating their home. So I am supportive of it. And I also am sensitive to the cost effectiveness as a homeowner and someone who is going to have a family very soon with a number of other costs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Asher. All right, next question. Vermont is in a housing crisis. The causes are complex and the solutions need to be multi-pronged. 30% of Vermont households rent their homes. 4 municipalities, including the city of Burlington, have passed charter changes to adopt just cause eviction protections, but they haven't yet been approved by the legislature. If you are elected, would you support just cause eviction policies? And what other interventions would you support to make housing more affordable and accessible to all Vermonters? Leon, you're up first this time.
Okay, thank you, Logan. Housing is a shortage, and with the background that I have, we need to look at all aspects of housing. Big, giant houses that we have out here, small houses need to be considered. The conditions of the houses need to be looked at. So renting houses is a shortage, and because of what you just mentioned here in terms of Burlington and other places, but shortages all over the place. So affordable houses for families in lower income is extremely challenging for them. They make low wages and wind up spending most of their wages just to stay in a house if they can. And then when they clump more and more into a situation that create other types of problems along that line. And so the cost associated with solving the problem shouldn't really be a consideration, because our goal is to make sure that we clean up the systems in terms of clean air, water, living, knowing what our capacity is. And so we need to put the necessary resources into that to fix it so that everybody can live in a certain manner within what our capabilities are, and be compared for climate change issues that occur. So that's my take on
Thank you.
housing.
Tim.
I guess I'll answer the second question first and just cause second. But, I think the bill that we just passed with Act 250, with, again, going back to the Tier 1, which Bennington would most likely benefit from, is going to enhance building here in Bennington. It's going to expedite the process. Should be able to get things done quicker. And another thing we should look at is, local zoning. You have certain sections of town, and I'm not pointing out old Bennington, but, you have 2 acres. If you don't have 2 acres, you can build 1 house. Should we, and I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but should we have discussions and saying, well, maybe it should be a ½ an acre? Some of these in Shasbury that have 5 to 10 acres, should we maximize the land that we have? open for discussion. Should we build upwards? You know, some places don't allow you to do like second or third levels. I'm not talking about a skyscraper, but you know, somewhat reasonable. These are all things that can create more housing that I think is realistic and doable, and we should be able to find a compromise to make that happen. And as far as just cause, being I'm the only one here that's on record voting against this piece of legislation, I have heartburn with this piece of legislation. In my experience and people talking to landlords, the just cause is an easier process as opposed to going through the regular process to evict a bad tenant. It just is. I mean, landlords aren't evicting good tenants. They're just not, at least not in my experience. So it's a very complex issue. The legislature agreed with my thought process because they halted all bills this year to come back, get all parties involved, and look at it and come up with a recommendation. And if there's a compromise or something that makes sense to me, I could consider supporting it. But as of now, my record is what it is, and I didn't go for it.
Thank you, Asher.
I would certainly consider supporting just cause eviction as legislation, although I would like to take a closer look at it. Another thing that I would consider supporting is rent control, specifically for landlords who own and earn in excess of money from their tenants. So I'm not talking about an old lady Johnson living in North Bennington who has to rent out a room to pay her mortgage. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about places like Sheriff House. There should be rent control on that. That being said, I wholly support, and I want to actually join my not my fellow yet, but State Representative Elizabeth Burrows, who's endorsed my campaign, in asking for there to be a disability coordinator hired by the Vermont legislature. This person will, among other things, help legislators advocate for all future housing projects to be more than ADA accessible and for other things to be accessible too. I believe very strongly that in addition to accessible, affordable housing here in Vermont, we need to take a look, thank you, at the issue of people experiencing homelessness. And I'm not sure if that's going to be a question, although I want to address it now. It is such an issue, and it's only going to get worse as time goes by. We absolutely need to look at more than just motels as a Band-Aid. We need to look at existing infrastructure being reutilized for emergency housing as well as tiny homes being built. We need to do everything we can do to ensure that those experiencing homelessness are supported every step of the way. Thank you so much.
When we talk about housing, I definitely think that the market is our primary objective to balance this out, and we're definitely out of whack. So then the question becomes, how does the state play a role in this? And I know that we have a question about that in general, but when it comes to housing, definitely the state has inhibited a lot of development, and that's partially through Act 250, which the legislature did have a lot of amendments to it, which I was almost entirely supportive of when I was reading through them. And I think if we continue to modify Act 250, it would make it better. It would allow for the stock of the housing to increase. But when you look at the actual households in Vermont, and this kind of explains the bottleneck we're in, 1/4 of people live alone in Vermont, and these are people that have larger homes. And so maybe renting a room isn't the worst idea. Maybe someone wants that option to have, and there could be tax incentives or some kind of credit that could allow for an older person or even someone that is middle age to bring in someone. We don't have to build new housing at that point because it's already there. We haven't reconfigured it properly so that we're maximizing everything that we have. But in terms of actually building houses in Vermont, it's amazing how since the 80s, and it's been on a steady decline, but annually it would increase by about 2% in Vermont. And granted, there was also population increase at that time, but today we're below 0.2% annually, and there's no housing being built. So how have we decreased housing construction by 90% in a 30-year window? It's not because the carpenters left. I mean, maybe they did. Maybe they went to go build houses somewhere else. But I'll tell you this: I don't want the government building my house. That I'll stand on that one. But the government doesn't have that role, and we need to definitely be empowering the private market to be making those decisions.
Thank you. All right, next question. Governor Phil Scott has used the most vetoes of any governor in Vermont's history and vetoed 8 major bills again this year, including important environmental, land use, and addiction treatment bills. Most of those bills were overridden in the House and the Senate, many times with tripartisan support. In addition, the governor has also shown that he is willing to ignore the advise and consent function of the Senate in his reappointment of the acting Secretary of Education. As a representative, how will you approach working with a governor who continuously disregards the role of the legislature and its elected representatives and senators from across Vermont? Tim, this is you first.
Well, that's $1 million question. Everybody has an answer. I want to know, but you know, it's a tough issue. There's no doubt. I mean, I think the governor won every single town last election. The House and the Senate have super majorities, so we're coming from an angle that we have a mandate. The governor thinks he has a mandate, and we think we have a mandate to do what we want. And you know, sometimes it gets messy, but I think ultimately it's you know, just trying to have honest and open conversations early on in the process, not waiting until, you know, the 11th hour and coming in and dropping, you know, whatever plan that they have, but just have honest communications. I know that's easier said than done, but I can say it does happen. If you look at this year, the appropriations bill, I mean, everybody thought the governor was going to veto that, and there was agreement. We came together and the governor passed it. So I know things can get worked out, you know, but in certain issues, we're just polar opposites that just fundamentally it's going to be hard to get there. You know, you try to do your best, but at the end of the day, you just know that you're at a standstill. And at that point, we do what we feel is right, and the governor's going to do what, you know, feels what he's right. And that's just the way the democracy is set up. If we have 2/3 of a vote, we get to override it. And I'm not saying that that's any means how we should pass legislation. We should never pass legislation and think we're just going to override it. We need to work together, because that's not beneficial to the constituents of the state of Vermont. It's just not. You have to have balance, and it seems like we've gotten away from that. So hopefully we'll do better. Thanks.
Thank you. Asher.
First of all, I just want to apologize. I inadvertently called you out, Mr. Johnson, with my last question while trying to think of a random name. So I wanted to own up. Say that I'm sorry. I hope I was not overstepping any bounds. I promise I was trying to think of random names. It turned out to apply to you. You know, we have Governor Phil Scott, who is Governor Veto. Unfortunately, a lot of the bills that we're going to pass, we're going to work hard on, that may very well benefit Vermonters, will face that veto, and we'll have to override the veto. A popular example comes from the medical monitoring bill that Senator Campion and late Senator Sears pushed twice. Governor Scott vetoed it twice, and then signed the third time during an election year when it was watered down. I'm all for working with the governor. I'm all for working with whomever across the aisle on any issue, at any stage of government. when you have a governor who's not going to look out for our part of the state, who's going to veto a medical monitoring bill twice that addresses the ChemFabs bill, that is unacceptable and gross. So I will support any opportunity to override a veto. I'll be proud to override any veto that he may address on any legislation that I feel is going to benefit Vermonters, and there are many pieces of legislation out there that have come and will come that will do just that. So I'll work with him when I can, although I cannot promise that legislature and the governor are going to see eye to eye going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
When it comes to Governor Scott and how he uses the veto pen, I've disagreed with it a lot, but just like he shouldn't have appointed the Secretary of Education, despite the Senate voting that down, I respect the fact that he vetoed it, and we respect those decisions, and that's why we've worked so hard to have a supermajority so that we can override the ones that we need. There were a lot of bills that he vetoed. Of those 8 that I disagreed with his veto on, and I agree with what the Democratic coalition did in both the House and the Senate on those bills. And I believe were you asking more about the legislators' role in the state? Was that more?
Yes, as a representative, how will you approach working with a governor who continuously disregards the role of the legislature and its elected representatives and senators from across Vermont?
That's just double checking.
Yeah.
But the legislature, it's part-time, of course, and that's by design. And I think that design works when you have the right people in there. And I think if we have the right people in there that value compromise, and I think most people do in the legislature. I mean, I've worked with them behind the scenes, and they're all trying to do their best. And it's hard when the governor was, as Tim pointed out, elected from every town in Vermont. And then similarly, you have a supermajority where the vast majority of people also voted for Democratic representatives. So I would look forward to working with him as well as other people that we may not agree with, but we have to get along. It's our state. We live in it together, and we don't want to become like Washington, D.C., where we can't get anything done in Montpelier.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, the governor definitely has a right to veto the bills. And all the things that we talked about here tonight as part of legislation are the responsibility of the representatives when they make it to the legislation and roles in terms of creating laws and establishing government agencies or articles of impeachment if necessary. But we have a two-party system. We have, the system where we have a body that's there, and we need to really work hard at coming to a real solution to make sure that everybody is equitably treated within those systems. So one of the roles that if I'm elected as your representative from District 2, all those duties will be part of my job. But the other part is that I need to represent the individuals in this district and strongly push for the things that are affecting us and take those issues from Bennington community to the other communities throughout the state of Vermont into Montpelier. And that's how we're going to get it. There is in every community, in every town, it's the percentages and it's the things that we need to look at to converse and convince all of those individuals that this need to be done a certain way or have some mitigation work in place for that.
Thank you. All right, final question. On the federal level, we see continued attacks on our democracy from the January 6th insurrection and Supreme Court decisions as recently as the beginning of this month. What is Vermont's role in strengthening our democracy, and what further legislation can be passed to ensure that Vermonters have their right to vote easily, accessible, and protected? And Asher, you're first.
That's an excellent question. Thank you, Logan. In addition to Vermont joining with other states to propose a constitutional amendment to enshrine reproductive rights in our Constitution, there's a number of things we could do. So we could look at making town meeting days across the state even more accessible than they already are. Bennington has made great headway with that, and I want to see every last town in Vermont as accessible as possible to persons with disabilities. It happens to be my community. I founded the Vermont Democratic Party Disability Caucus. Furthermore, I would consider looking at ranked choice voting. Consider as your representative supporting things that other towns and cities in Vermont have done, like potentially allowing 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote, potentially allowing refugees to vote. I believe there's a lot that could be done to advertise to people who have been convicted of felonies that they have the right to vote. Because it's my understanding that regardless of your past, you have the right to vote in Vermont. I met a fellow when I was out door knocking the other day who was convicted of a felony. That being said, he's a hardworking family man, and he didn't think he had the right to vote in Vermont. Now, I told him, reach out to the town clerk, ask them, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure you have the right to vote, mister. So I believe making it very clear that every Vermonter, every Vermont citizen has the right to vote, and ensuring that we're doing everything we can to widen the scope of how folks can vote. There's my time right there. Thank you. I want to make it as accessible as possible to everybody. Thank you.
Well, protecting democracy is probably my bread and butter issue. It's something that I've dedicated a lot of time to. I started actually all my political stuff with election supervision with the Civil Rights Project, and that was so interesting because I would walk into polling places and you would have cases come through a fraud line saying that people were tampering with ballots, election officials were denying their right to vote, and serious allegations that you don't want to hear coming out of any voting booth. But having been in Vermont and helping run elections here, we don't have 1/10 of those problems. Now, granted, we do have problems, and we do need to make sure that we protect it going forward and working on the issues that we have, but we're in a really good standing right now. So we do have to protect our democracy and showcase how great it is to other places that are trying to do what we've done. I think in terms of protecting it for future generations, though, we have to look at civic engagement among our young people, and that starts with education at the school level and making sure that they're learning civics and doing things that are very tangible that we've done before, but we've kind of lost recently. In this spring, I went up to Alaska, and speaking of ranked choice voting, it was so wonderful to be there and speak with people who implemented ranked choice voting in Alaska. It's one of only 2 states where it is statewide that they do this system, and it was so interesting to hear both the positive and the negative. So it will be interesting to have another bill come up on that issue again, because it most likely will. And it was, again, very interesting to learn about that topic, and I hope to explore more about it. And then also just having done international work with democracy and going places and talking with people, particularly in Africa, how they still idolize our country. Despite everything we've gone through, they still look at America as the beacon of hope for democracy. And so I think we just have to be blessed with what we have and definitely keep expanding on it, but also doing outreach to make sure other places can be with us. And that's my time.
Okay, thank you. How do we best protect democracy? Democracy in this country, as it stands, with litigation, legislation, and communication. But one of the best things that we have going for us is to stand up for fair elections. The rule of law to ensure that all individuals have an understanding and a chance to vote. And with education about what it is that we have and what democracy stands for, then that's how we protect democracy. Voting fairly, making sure everybody's educated and legislated efforts to prevent people from changing the wheel of the government that we all swore to protect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh, yeah, big topic here. I guess first, local access TV. You know, they came to us, I think, a year and a half ago, stating that they needed more, money to do what they continue to do, and which plays obviously a critical role for people, not being able to make it to a place here or to the firehouse down in Bennington, is just, streaming it. And, we were able, I think, I could be wrong, but I think we had a dedicated source of $1 million for public access, which is a great thing to, keep democracy alive and well. You want people informed on how they're going to vote and what those issues are. Another thing is civics. I'm not sure when we actually did away with that in high schools, but I think that almost should be a mandatory course in high school, is having civics classes, to teach them about democracy, teach them about other aspects of government. The mail-in ballots is somewhat confusing because, we have for the general election, but come August 13th, we don't have them. So people are going to be a little bit confused, assuming that they're going to get a ballot in the mail. So, I think, what's that? Yeah. Yeah, you have to request it, but it's not automatic.
You just have to update it.
Yeah, so it's not automatic. So I'm just saying, should we put it in line with what we have in the general election and become automatic? Open for discussion, but again, I think that would go a long way for getting voter involvement and strengthening our, democracy. I think those are the notes that I have.
Thank you. Closing statements or questions?
Your call.
Does anybody in the crowd have a question that you would like to ask? We have time for probably one. Let's hear it, Vicki.
Hi, I'm Vicki Lamprin. In the spirit of transparency, I sit on the Community Policing Advisory Review Board. I've heard a couple of people mention the word community policing. We've done a lot of outreach this year to help people understand that. But I'm curious from the folks sitting up at the big desk up there, what community policing means to them.
Okay. So, Bill, I think you were up next in our order.
Well, I don't know if it's too fair that I answer this because I was on the board. But to me, I think community policing, and I think we get so many different definitions, but definitely having the police in the community for me is what that really means, is making sure that they're on the ground, people know them, and that they're visible. I don't think, I think that with community policing, it's not going to be as difficult to implement as we've discussed. But I think that we definitely have to look at the data and see what people want, because it's also about the values that people want to see in their police when they go out into the community and they want to be safe. So just working with that.
I figured I'm next. Community policing. An example of what took place in the schools. We were going in that direction and thinking that we had to have police officers in the school system. And part of the things that we changed was to have teachers that learn and know their students and able to manage them than to have law enforcement within the school system. There's no separation between in school and out of school. There is now. At some point, based on the laws, you have to have registered police officers. But teachers taking the responsibility of knowing their kids, knowing the students, and making sure that they separate that and they understand that. So in the community, the police officers has a responsibility as well. And those things that can't be resolved within the community, then you need need to have an officer involved to help document the things or solve the problem, or you may have someone come in. So there's places where you need to have the officers be in, but you don't want them growing up with the kids in kindergarten through 12 and then out in the community. There is no separation, and there's no belief that I have any faith in terms of what I need to be doing later in life. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what my take is. I guess my envision of what this would mean is I would never want to remove law enforcement from the community from doing their job. But if there's situations where community members that are in a specific field, whether it's mental health, healthcare providers, that could defuse a situation before it escalates into something that doesn't need to go, I think that's a smart approach. But when you say community policing, does that mean I can start going up to whoever and say you violated what law? See, I don't know enough about it, what it actually means, but my first thought is I would need to see the details, and if it's hand in hand with a police officer being there to help diffuse a situation, I would be on board with that. But I'm not. It's a broad question that I don't want to get myself into trouble. I don't know what I'm answering.
All right, thank you, Ashley.
Vicki, thank you so much for asking that question. And frankly, it's one that I would appreciate more education on. To me, community policing not only means more active police in our community, as Will said, it also means a police department that is not only accessible, but proactive in hearing from residents on any concern or criticism that they may have, particularly working class residents, residents of color, folks who are at most at risk of less than friendly interactions with the police. It's no secret that here in Bennington, our police have at times, profiled. So having a police department and police departments across the state that are proactive in receiving that kind of feedback and acting upon it in some measurable way is crucial to me. And that's part of what community policing means to me, not just being active in the community, being receptive, listening to the community. That matters so much to me. And oh gosh, I know I had something else here. I want to see our police department, when they make a mistake, right? They make a mistake that widens the gap between them and the people who are working class, who may not have, who may have animosity toward the police. At the very least, own up and apologize. And furthermore, do everything in their power to really be proactive listeners and utilize some of that feedback in future operations, future policing. And yes, I would love more education on what community policing means in the practical sense of the word. Thank you so much for that question, Vicki. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, so we have gotten to our final statements and concluding thoughts part of the evening. So you'll each have 2 minutes, and we are going to start with Leon this time. 2 minutes.
First of all, I just want to thank everyone for coming out to listen to us tonight and share your views before the meeting and to hear what we have to say and how we need to see what needs to take place. And part of my closing remarks is that I just wanted to thank, again, the voters of District 2, Bennington County, and so forth, for believing and trusting in me in the past to do things right by you, your kids, and your grandkids. That's the generation that I've been affected by and working with now. So thank you for trusting me to be fair, ethical, honest, when officiating sports in the town, regardless of what team won. Vote for Leon Johnson, your Bennington representative of District 2, to represent you in the legislation as an ethical leader, an honest service, and real progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, Tim.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Thank you for the sponsors for the questions, very thoughtful questions. I simply humbly ask for one of your 2 votes that you have on August 13th for Bennington 2. I've always been a person that had a mindset of really listening to both sides of the issues. And I know that's, I figure most people would do that, but unfortunately a lot of people in Montpelier have their minds set up before they truly understand both sides of the issue. And I feel like I have that respect for my colleagues up there, that I really analyze the pros and cons. And, those issues will, dictate, how I'll vote. I've always had the mindset, you vote your conscience, because most people aren't going to reach out to you for every single issue. So you vote your conscience, you vote your constituency, and then you vote your party. And then the chips will lay where they will lie. So I asked for 1 or 2 votes, and I'm going to ask for a second vote. And shifting gears to the Senate race, as you all well know, we lost Senator Sears, and he is currently on the primary ballot. And knowing Dick, he would not want, no disrespect to the Bennington Town Committee, but he would not want the committee to pick his replacement. He would want it to have a democratic process, and we currently have candidates, and one in particular that I'm supporting is Rob Plunkett. So the people here and the people out at Cat TV, if you consider writing in Robert Plunkett for one of your 2 Senate seats, I would be very grateful for doing that. And also Seth Bogarts is actually running too. So those 2 candidates would be great for Bennington County.
Sure.
During my time on the Southwest Tech School Board, which I'm honored to serve on with Leon, I've secured gender identity on the anti-discrimination policy, a step in the right direction for our community. I believe in getting actionable items done, getting results. I've struggled with Tourette syndrome my whole life, and yet it has made me an even more sincere fighter for what I believe in. I've set my mind on moving to and becoming a resident of Bennington. I did it. I've set my mind on becoming a teacher. Teaching disadvantaged students, I did it. I've set my mind on being elected a DNC delegate to represent all of you at the DNC in Chicago next month. I did it. I've set my mind on finding a partner and having a child. I did that. I would be honored if you would send me to Montpelier. I hope to earn one of your 2 votes. I love the opportunity to fight for issues ranging from securing commuter rail and more sidewalks, to accessible trails, to universal health care, to pushing Vermont toward being the first state to ask for a constitutional convention to enshrine reproductive rights as one of our amendments. There are many issues that I support, and I hope that you will visit AsherEdelson.com, whether or not you're on the fence, to learn more about why I'm running, who I am, how to get in touch with me, and more of the issues that I feel passionately about that I didn't have time to discuss today because I only have so much time and my Tourette's take up part of them. So thank you all so much for being here. May the God of your choice bless you.
Well, I guess I'm last. And we're 2 weeks away. I mean, it feels like summer has flown by, but I just want to thank everyone again for coming out tonight. I know you guys could have done a lot of other things on a Tuesday evening, but I just hope that I can leave you here with this, that hopefully my experience in Montpelier and politics in general, hopefully that can show what I'm capable of serving and doing, but also my fierce passion for compromise and my ability to work with people regardless of their political affiliation. I take a lot of pride in that. We're not all red, not all blue. We're all in between. We're somewhere in the middle. And I think, because we didn't have a chance to go into everything that we value, but the big three things that I've been campaigning on are sheriff reform and working with making that funding model more appropriate for our rural communities, including Bennington and other places, to really have a strong public safety network, working more on healthcare accessibility, because we all know that Blue Cross Blue Shield just jacked the rates up about 20%, and that's going to hit us all really hard. I know it's going to hurt my bill when that comes. And then the last thing is taxes. I mean, we have seen now 2 years where taxes have gone up double digits statewide, and that's not sustainable. But if we want to keep things the way it's going, we have to figure out more revenue models to continue down. So I look forward to exploring how we can alleviate taxes on people, especially property taxes. But I hope I can count on your support on August 13th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we hear it for everybody who spoke tonight? They did such a good job. All right, thank you. And thank you everybody for coming out. If you're curious about learning more about any of the organizations, check out our websites, and thank you.